It was a quiet morning just like any other. At exactly 8 a.m., a farmer unlocked his farmhouse, ready to begin his daily routine. But as he stepped outside, something strange caught his eye, a mysterious bag lying behind the house. Curious, he walked closer. The bag looked suspiciously heavy. With trembling hands, he unzipped it, and what he saw next froze him in terror. Inside the bag was a severed head, long hair tangled, eyes lifeless, frozen in a silent scream. But the horror didn't stop there. Beneath the head, the entire body was hacked into pieces, stuffed inside like discarded trash. Panic surged through him. Who could have done something this monstrous? Without wasting a second, he grabbed his phone and called the police. When the authorities arrived, they carefully examined the remains. Moments later, they made a shocking discovery. This wasn't just any victim. This was Christian, a finalist in the prestigious Miss Switzerland pageant. Christian had been missing for days. But now she had been found in the most gruesome way possible. But the real questions remain. Who brutally murdered Christian? Why was she targeted in such a horrifying manner? What dark secrets led to her tragic fate? Tonight, we uncover the terrifying truth behind the case of Christian. Christian, born on April 15, 1985, in Switzerland, Christina's passion for modeling was evident from a young age. But she wasn't just passionate, she was exceptionally talented. In 2003, she won the prestigious Miss Northwest Switzerland pageant, and by 2007 she had made it to the finals of Miss Switzerland. Her charm, elegance, and confidence made her a well-respected name in the industry. Over the years, she accumulated numerous accolades, earning admiration from peers and fans alike. But Kristina was much more than just a pretty face. She was a visionary. While most models focus solely on their careers, Kristina expanded her horizons. She was not only a successful model but also a brilliant entrepreneur. She launched multiple successful businesses, proving that her intelligence was just as striking as her beauty. One of her biggest achievements was opening her own modeling institute, where she trained young aspirants in fashion, catwalks, and casting preparations. She didn't just walk the ramp, she built a legacy. But Kristina's talents didn't stop there. She had an unmatched intellect which led her to a career in technology. She worked as an IT consultant at Google, a position that many could only dream of. On her website, she proudly described herself as model, Google job interviewer, Miss Switzerland finalist, manager, catwalk coach. And she wasn't just working for small firms. Major brands like Mercedes, HP, and Philips were among her high-profile clients. Despite her demanding career, Kristina was not all about business. She had a love for reading, a passion for volleyball, and an interest in documentaries. Above all, she was a devoted wife and a loving mother to 2 daughters. She had everything: beauty, brains, success, and a happy family. But behind this picture-perfect life, dark clouds were gathering. Something sinister was waiting for Kristina. Something that would turn her dream life into a chilling nightmare. What happened to Kristina? Who wanted to destroy a woman who had it all? And why was she brutally murdered? The answers lie ahead, in the twisted mystery of the case of Kristina. In her journey to success, Christina met Mark Rieben, a charming businessman who was 3 years older than her. Mark came from an extremely wealthy family, and thanks to his father's fortune, he was already a millionaire. But while the world saw him as a successful entrepreneur, Kristina's friends had a very different opinion. To them, Mark was nothing more than a spoiled rich brat. He had money but lacked humility. He had charm but lacked sincerity. And most importantly, they believed he was not the right man for Kristina. But love often ignores warnings. Before stepping into the business world, Mark had served as an officer in the Swiss Air Force and later pursued his studies at Stanford University. His background was impressive, and despite the concerns of those around Kristina, the two fell in love. In August 2017, Kristina and Mark tied the knot in a fairy tale wedding. The ceremony was nothing short of a royal affair, set in a breathtaking castle atop the hills. For the world, it was a dream come true. A beautiful model marrying a rich and successful man. In 2020, they welcomed their first daughter. A year later, in 2021, their family grew again with the birth of their second daughter. From the outside, everything was perfect. A luxurious home, a loving husband, 2 beautiful daughters, thriving careers. Kristina frequently posted pictures on social media, showing her happy family life. Smiling vacations, elegant parties, playful moments with her children. It was a life many envied. But behind those perfect pictures was a terrifying truth. On July 14, 2023, a disturbing call was made to the police. The reason? Domestic violence. The authorities arrived at Kristina and Mark's house, and for the first time, the illusion of a perfect marriage began to crack. Later, in fear and desperation, Kristina confided in a friend. She revealed the shocking truth: Mark had physically abused her. And worse, he had threatened her. "If you ever call the police again, it will be much worse for you." Kristina was terrified. She had always been strong, independent, and fearless. But inside her own home, she was trapped in a nightmare. Yet, despite her fear, she gathered the courage to report him. Slowly, the secrets hidden behind closed doors started to unravel. The world that once saw them as a power couple was now about to discover the dark truth of their marriage. But was Mark's abuse the worst thing that happened to Kristina? Or was this just the beginning of something far more sinister? The case of Kristina was only getting darker. Mark worked tirelessly to maintain the illusion of a perfect husband. To the world, he was charming, successful, and deeply in love with Kristina. But behind the closed doors of their marriage, reality was far different. Even after the domestic violence incident, Kristina continued to post smiling pictures on social media. Photos of family vacations, romantic getaways, and happy moments with her daughters. She wanted to show the world that everything was fine. One of her last Instagram posts was from a romantic trip with Mark. In the picture, they were standing together by a serene lake, the perfect couple, deeply in love, or so it seemed. But the truth? That trip was a nightmare. On their way there, Mark's mood turned dark. He looked at Kristina and coldly said, "I'm just waiting for us to fight. Let's see what happens when I go back to my daughters." Later that evening, at a high-end restaurant, Mark exploded on a random couple for no reason. His words were harsh, insulting them openly. Kristina, embarrassed and worried, pleaded with him to stop. But instead of calming down, Mark turned his anger toward her. "Don't tell me what I can and can't do," he snapped. Then, without another word, he stormed out of the restaurant, leaving Kristina alone. These incidents weren't isolated. They were happening more frequently. But Kristina never told anyone, not even her parents. To everyone on the outside, their marriage still seemed perfect. But then, something changed. Kristina's parents hadn't heard from her in days. It was strange, very strange. Kristina was always close to her family. She talked to them regularly. Why had she suddenly gone silent? Then one day, Kristina's father received a phone call. It was from his grandchildren's school. The school staff informed him that Kristina hadn't picked up her daughters. Panic set in. He immediately called Mark. But Mark's response was unsettling. "I can't reach her either," Mark claimed. And then, in a dismissive tone, he added, "Kristina does this all the time. She disappears for days, never saying where she's going or when she'll be back." But Kristina's father knew his daughter. She would never disappear without telling someone. Something was very, very wrong. And soon, the horrifying truth about Kristina's disappearance would come to light. Mark tried to assure Kristina's parents that there was nothing to worry about. "This is just one of those times," he said casually. "She'll be back soon." But days passed, and Kristina never returned. Her father, growing more and more anxious, decided to pick up his granddaughters from school and take them to Mark and Kristina's house. That night, after putting the children to sleep, he began searching the house. He hoped to find some clue, any hint of where Kristina might be. But he found nothing. Frustrated and worried, he eventually returned home, convincing himself that maybe, just maybe, Kristina needed time to deal with personal matters and would return soon. The silence that spoke louder than words. Days turned into weeks, and still no sign of Kristina. Her parents' concern grew into sheer panic. But what shocked them the most was Mark's behavior. He was unnaturally calm. He showed no signs of worry. He acted as if Kristina's disappearance was completely normal. To the outside world, he was just a father taking care of his daughters. But Kristina's parents knew he was lying. They had spoken to their daughter regularly. She had never disappeared like this before. Then, on February 13, 2024, Kristina's father couldn't take it anymore. He drove back to Mark's house. He spent hours there, even sitting down for lunch with Mark and his granddaughters. Mark, as usual, played his part well. "I have no idea where she is," he repeated. But deep inside, Kristina's father had a gut feeling. Something wasn't right. The discovery that changed everything. Before leaving, he thought, why not check the house one last time? The house was massive. Searching every corner was a challenge. But as he walked outside, something caught his eye. At the very end of the house, in the basement, there was a small laundry room. Something told him to go inside. As he entered, he saw several large trash bags piled up. And then, his heart stopped. Peeking out from one of the bags was a lock of blonde hair. His breath quickened. His hands trembled. He stepped closer, reached out, and slowly opened the bag. Inside was the severed head of his own daughter, Kristina. For a moment he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His mind refused to accept the horrifying sight before him. Then the terror hit him all at once. He stumbled backward, let out a blood-curdling scream and ran out of the house. Frantically, he stopped a passing car in the middle of the road and with shaking hands dialed the police. The nightmare he had feared the most had just become his horrifying reality. Kristina was not missing. She was not coming back. She had been murdered in the most brutal way imaginable. But now the biggest question remained. Who had done this, and why? The case of Kristina's gruesome murder was about to unravel. The moment Kristina's father saw the horrors in that room, he did the right thing. He ran. He didn't let his rage take over. He didn't storm back inside to confront Mark. Because if he had, who knows what would have happened to him. Instead, he immediately called the police. A crime scene that shook investigators to their core. Within minutes, police officers arrived at the scene. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared them for what they were about to witness. Inside that laundry room of death, they found a nightmare beyond comprehension. Kristina wasn't missing. She wasn't just murdered. She was butchered. Her body was chopped into pieces, making the investigation incredibly difficult. Police determined that Kristina was first strangled to death. Then, in an unspeakable act of brutality, her killer used 3 different tools to dismember her body. A knife, saw, garden shears. All common household tools, but in the hands of a monster, they became instruments of horror. But the nightmare didn't end there. Some parts of Kristina's body had been blended. Yes, blended. Some parts had been dissolved in acid. It was a methodical, calculated attempt to destroy all evidence. Signs of torture, the suffering Kristina endured. An autopsy revealed something even more disturbing. Kristina wasn't just murdered. She was tortured before her death. Her body bore horrific injuries. Bruises under her eyebrows, cheeks, and nose, signs of violent physical abuse. Deep wounds on her head, suggesting blunt force trauma. Bruises on her right thigh, hinting at vicious struggles. Hair forcibly pulled out, evidence of sadistic cruelty. But the most disturbing discovery? Before dismembering her, the killer dislocated Kristina's hip joints and pulled out her bones. Then, in a twisted, surgical act, he removed her uterus. Forensic experts believe this was not just murder. It was an act of hatred, a deep-seated rage against women. Was her killer mentally disturbed? Or did he harbor a sinister obsession with destroying Kristina completely? The prime suspect, Mark Rieben. All eyes turned to one man, Mark. And when the police arrived to arrest him, his reaction was bone-chilling. As he was being taken away, he turned to Kristina's father and sneered. If you hadn't stayed so long at my house, if you had left earlier, this body would have never been found, and that would have been better for everyone. A monster without emotion. Throughout his arrest and interrogation, Mark showed no emotion, no remorse, no regret, not a single sign of grief. It was as if he felt nothing. The world now knew the truth. The loving husband, the successful businessman, the perfect family man, was a cold-blooded murderer. But why? What drove Mark to commit such an unimaginable crime? And most importantly, was this his first time? Or had he done this before? The shocking truth was yet to be uncovered. Mark wasn't angry. Mark wasn't crying. Mark didn't show a shred of regret. When police interrogated him, he immediately confessed to dismembering Kristina's body. But he denied killing her. Mark's first lie, I didn't kill her. According to Mark, the truth was much different. He claimed that one evening after returning home from work, he found Kristina lying dead at the bottom of the stairs. Panic set in. Fearing that the police would suspect him, he decided to get rid of her body. Instead of calling for help, instead of reporting his wife's mysterious death, he chopped up her body and planned to tell everyone she ran away. His story was suspicious to say the least. Could a loving husband really do something this horrific, even if he wasn't the killer? It wasn't impossible, but in Mark's case, it was highly unlikely. And then the autopsy results shattered his lie. The medical evidence, Kristina was strangled. Forensic experts determined that Kristina's cause of death was strangulation. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a fall. She was murdered. Mark's story was falling apart. And when he realized the police had undeniable proof, He did what all guilty people do. He changed his story. Mark's second lie, "I killed her," in self-defense. Mark now claimed that Kristina attacked him with a knife during an argument. According to him, the fight escalated. Kristina grabbed a knife. She tried to stab him. In self-defense, he had no choice but to kill her. A convenient story. But the evidence said otherwise. The authorities dug deeper, and what they uncovered was shocking. The blender. The same blender Mark used to destroy Kristina's remains. He had purchased it days before her murder. This meant he had been planning the crime in advance. Mark's phone records. While dismembering Kristina's body, Mark was watching random YouTube videos. Casually. As if he was doing something as normal as cooking dinner. This wasn't a man in shock. This wasn't a grieving husband. This was pure evil. While we use YouTube to study, relax, or pass time, Mark used it while disposing of his wife's body. Forensic psychiatrists analyzed Mark, and the results were chilling. He showed clear sadistic and sociopathic traits. Experts found that Mark had little to no empathy, a complete lack of emotional intelligence, extreme impulse control issues, uncontrollable frustration and aggression. In short, he wasn't just a murderer. He was a cold-blooded monster, one who planned, executed, and felt nothing for what he had done. But the biggest question still remains. Why did Mark do this? Was it jealousy? Rage? A hidden double life? Or was he simply born a killer? The truth behind his motive is darker than anyone could have imagined. In the end, the court came to a chilling conclusion. If Mark could do this to his own wife, a woman he claimed to love, then no one was safe, not even his own children. The prosecution's case, a murder fueled by hate. In court, the prosecution laid out an undeniable truth. Mark didn't just kill Kristina. He planned it. The tools he used, a knife, a saw, garden shears. The lengthy, exhausting process of disposing of her body. The brutality of his actions going beyond just murder. It wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a deep-seated hatred for Kristina. The prosecution argued that Mark's lack of remorse, his calculated methods, and the extreme effort he put into covering up the crime proved one thing. Mark Rieben was a dangerous sociopath. Mark's violent past, a pattern of abuse. Then investigators uncovered even more disturbing facts. A few months before her murder, Kristina had called the police on Mark. She had reported domestic violence. She told officers that Mark had strangled her, that he had slammed her head against the wall. This wasn't the first time Mark had abused a woman. His ex-girlfriend was also interrogated, and what she revealed was horrifying. Mark had physically assaulted her. Once, in a fit of rage, he drove his car over her feet. Another time, he slammed on the brakes while she was in the passenger seat, smashing her head into the dashboard. He later threatened her while driving, terrifying her to the point that she ended the relationship in 2016, just a year before Mark married Kristina. A marriage that was falling apart. From Kristina's friends, even more dark secrets came to light. She had confided in them that after the birth of her first daughter, her marriage started to fall apart. At first, they thought it was normal. Marriages have ups and downs. But what they didn't know was how dangerous Mark really was. Kristina tried to fix things. She signed them up for couples therapy. But Mark never took it seriously. He skipped sessions or left early. He started drinking more. He began smoking weed in the basement. And one day, Kristina admitted the truth to her friends. She was done. She was going to divorce him. The breaking point, Kristina's fear of divorce. Kristina knew how powerful Mark's family was. She feared he would harm her, or worse, hurt their children. And when it came to their kids, Mark had a disturbing obsession. He wanted to create the perfect family image. He wanted his daughters to be flawless. He controlled everything, their outfits, their activities, even their behavior. He treated them not as children but as a project. One that had to be absolutely perfect. Kristina, on the other hand, wanted them to be kids. She wanted them to be happy, free, and loved. And that's when Mark saw her as a problem. She was standing in the way of his perfect vision. And in Mark's twisted mind, he had to eliminate her. What happens to Mark now? With Mark behind bars, Kristina's children were handed over to her family. His defense team tried to save him from prison, arguing that Mark was mentally unstable. But forensic experts had already examined him. Mark wasn't insane. Mark wasn't a man who lost control. Mark was a cold, calculating killer. The verdict? Justice for Kristina? Switzerland does not have the death penalty. But if found guilty, Mark could face up to 20 years in prison. Is that enough for what he did? Does 20 years in jail justify the horrors Kristina endured? Or should a monster like Mark never walk free again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this case disturbing yet important, hit the like button and share this video to spread awareness. And don't forget to subscribe, because next time, I'll bring you another shocking case that will leave you speechless.